So we're going to start now in butterfly position, soles of the feet coming together in front of the mat. And what I would like you to try to do, bear with me, is to zip your toes together. This is a genuine yoga move. So using your hands to help you interlace toes from one foot between the other foot. Might not be very easy, they might not stay there, but just trying to push the toes of one foot between the other foot in alternate pattern, like a zip. This can feel really weird, but actually it's very good at getting into some bits and bobs that are not often challenged unless you paint your toenails with those toe separated things quite frequently. So if you've got those in a position where they are going to stay, we'll just leave them there for the now. And if you want to separate those out at any point, then please do. But that's just helping us multitask to start to open up the toes while we do some arm stuff. Fantastic. So we'll get the blood flow going first, looking at the wrists and the fingers. So just like you to stick out your arms to the sides, palms facing, pointing down a little bit. And then we're just going to do stars. So fingers out, spread, loose fist. And there's just alternating those. Do 20 of those nice and fast. This can get pumpy quite quickly. And once you've done 20 down there, we'll take the arms out to shoulder height. And then kind of to a 10 and 2 position. And you know what's coming, it's my least favorite. We're going to go up straight. 20 there, forearms are pretty pumped now, and then up straight above the head. Count them down. It's going to get harder, but just keep pushing through for that 20. Amazing. And then once you've done that, just having a little bit of a shakeout. That's the climbing pump we're used to when we can actually climb. And then just taking the arms in front and beginning some wrist circles. So loosely, both wrists going whichever direction you like. We'll just make sure that we'll swap them round and going the other direction. Really, really nice. And then swapping again. And then back the other way. So if you're like me and that's been enough to pump you out of your tiny mind in your forearms, we're just going to take the thumb and the fingers and do a little bit of fascia release down here in the forearm. So tucking the thumb into the palm and then rolling down the fingers over the top to make a fist. I'd like you then to cock the fist down towards the screen so that you're sort of pushing your fingers towards the screen. And then using your hand quite firmly, starting with the wrist, really sort of starting to pull down from the wrist into that forearm there. That kind of loosens up the fascia, which is this kind of, there's some really fun dissections on the internet if you're into that kind of thing. But it's when you're cutting up chicken and it's that kind of white stuff that's holding all the meat together. There are these amazing layers of connective tissue that come between your muscles and everything else, and they can tend to get quite blocky, so we want to keep them moving. So really just getting into those, and then it's not going to do any harm in terms of shifting that pump out either. Lovely. Give that a little bit of a shake out, and then we'll go again with the other arm. So big style with the hand, thumb into the palm, fingers coming down over, cock that fist towards the screen, and then get a firm grip on your wrist, and then starting to use your fingers to massage down into that forearm, starting to loosen it up. You can really be quite firm with this. Kind of what would have been when I was at school called that kind of semi-Chinese burn sensation, but really feel that you can manipulate that tissue quite strongly. Nice. And then we'll have a shake out there. I'm still pumped out of my tiny mind. We'll start to move into some of the fingers now. Again, if your toes are great, leave them. If you need to take them out and come into a comfortable seat. And you're going to come in with hands pointing towards each other, so palms either side. And then we're going to bend down the fingers. So probably take a little look at your fingers. It's quite hard to do this, but first movement, we're going to try and bend down just at the top joint of those fingers. It's hard to separate them and they'll all be different lengths. And then coming down to the next joint. And then coming down so that just your fingers are extended above your palm. Nice. And then take your fingers down to touch your palm. And then feel like you're dragging them up as you release them back to the top. So coming all the way up the palm and uncurling and up. So top joint, next joint, all the fingers out, palm, drag it up. 3 more times. Top joint, middle joint, all the fingers, palm, drag it up. 2 more. Thinking about your level of crimp. So crimp, bit of more contact. Feel that kind of more sloper kind of drag grip. All the way down and up. Nice. 1 more. Lovely. And then we'll take the fingers together, interlacing in a fist, and then just do some wrist rolls out now. Try to go in both directions or do something really clever like figure eights. And then to push some of that pump away again, we'll take that fist, push the palms away, and send those towards the screen. Again, getting those wrists now into extension, which will start to release some of that pump. I spend quite a lot of time in wrist flexion as climbers, so really feeling that can release there. Nice. And then 1 more little finger drill while we're here. So taking your hands into heart center, I'd like you to spread the fingers so that they're all paired against each other, but then pointing into the center. And what I'd like you to do is releasing both of your index fingers, take them down and then tap onto the back of your hand. I'll bring this in a little bit closer so it's easier to see. So releasing fingers in pairs to tap down, and then that pair of fingers, that pair of fingers. And you'll just begin to notice that you have tightness, possibly in some of your finger flexors and extensors. So just moving that along the hand. I haven't quite got coordination for this today. And then just doing that a few more times. Again, you'll start to just sort of get an idea of where the tightness is. And this is another thing that you might want to add to your finger warm-up, with all of the slightly cooler things with the resistant bands and fingerboards that people can do. Nice. So we'll just get to the end of whichever direction we're going. And then we'll have 1 more shake out there. Lovely. We're going to take it to a kneel and start to bring in the toes to this. So I'll flip around so you can see me from the side, but you'll find where you are. What we'd like to do ideally is to tuck the toes. So getting the toes underneath the ankles. If your little toes are quite short, you might need to manipulate them so that they can bend round, but ideally you've got all of your toes tucked, so you're getting this nice stretch along the bottom of the foot. If sitting up straight is available to you, that's great, because you're getting maximum load down through the body. If that's excruciating, you can take a little bit of weight off at any time by coming forward and taking some of that weight onto your hands. So you're cool. And then from here, we're just going to multitask because we're climbers. So while our toes are stretching, I'm going to stick out the arms to the sides. And then with the palms facing the front. Again, we're going to tuck the thumb into the palm and then roll the fingers around to make a loose fist. And then what I'd like you to do is to imagine you're pouring jugs of water out towards the sides. So tipping down so it stretches over the top of the thumb. So you're not changing the orientation of your arms, you're just stretching along the inside of the wrist and the top of the thumb. And then beginning to feel you can slowly build that out a little bit more. I don't think there's any way I could do this with real jugs of water, but it was the best description I could think of. Nice, so stretch coming down along that top edge of the thumb and what feels currently like the top, or what would normally be the inside of your wrist. Lovely. Stopping there, opening up the hands again, and then we're going to take it into a fist with the fingers curling in first and then the thumb just sitting on the top. We'll rotate the arm so that the palms come down towards the ground. And then from here, rotating those fists down towards the ground. Again, that's going to come into the forearm. And if you still haven't pushed the pump from the stars at the beginning, then you'll be feeling that quite a lot now. If your toes are killing you, feel free to release them at any time and just sit back on your heels in a normal kneel. If you're still there, well done. It's something that needs to be built up to. And it really depends on your patterning of what you do with your feet on a day-to-day basis. Cool, so we'll just do a couple more of these. Nice, and then we'll have a little shake out there. So I'll just turn around again, releasing the toes and then coming down to just sit on your feet. Just enjoy that for now with that feeling of release. And then just taking your hands and having a little bit of a massage of the other hand. So just feeling like you can work into the webbing in between the fingers a little bit. In terms of kind of meridians and Eastern medicine, there are a lot of really good pressure points there. But again, with all of the kind of stress that we put on our fingers and our hands, getting into that kind of connective tissue as well as into the meaty parts of the muscles can be really helpful. And then just coming past the wrist and then into the lower forearm, really getting a bit of movement in there. It can kind of break down some of the blockages and move around all the good stuff as well as shifting the bad stuff like the lactic. And then just coming into the other hand. So again, finding those nice pressure points between the fingers. And if you do pick up a finger injury or something in the hand at any point, quite a lot of physios will recommend that you do some massage because you haven't really got very good circulation in your fingers. So it's a good way to get as much as you can moving through somewhere which isn't going to help itself in terms of repair. Nice. And then again, just coming down into that lower forearm, getting a little bit of nice shift there. Lovely. So we're going to go the other way on our ankles and toes now. So there are two ways that you can do this. You can sort of continue to sit on your feet and then sort of alternately use your hand to lift each knee, which will come and do the stretching the top of the ankle one at a time. You might like to try that. Just using the left arm to left knee and then right arm to lift the right knee. You'll feel that stretch come along all along the top of the ankle. So kind of the opposite direction to what we were doing in that squat. Otherwise, you might like to try it both at once. So you can take your hands behind you and then just gradually bring yourself back, weight backwards so that you lift up both knees and come onto the tops of the feet. And if you're really stretchy here, there's a thing you can kind of do where you grab both knees and kind of just sort of hover there in a balance. But that's super painful for me because I've broken both ankles in my time, so they don't stretch very well. So wherever you are, just making sure it's equal on both sides. And breathing here. Really nice. Gradually pushing yourself forward so that you come back onto balance. Be careful if you've got tender ankles. And then we'll take it into a tabletop position here. So bringing the hands down to the mat and setting up so that you have the shoulders above the wrists and then the hips above the knees. Shoulder width between the hands and hip width between the knees. Great, so just take a look down at your hands now. We kind of get casual with our bases of support. And again, this is somewhere where we can make sure it's really good. So spread the fingers really wide. You might choose to have either your index fingers parallel or your middle fingers parallel. That will kind of affect the position of your elbows, and one or the other will be more comfortable for you. So just take a little look and work out which one works best for you. And then think about where the weight's going down through your hands. So ideally you want good contact through the base of your thumb, the base of your index finger, and the base of your little finger. And a good sense of support there, and you're not dumping too much into the heel of your hand. So just play with that weight distribution, make sure it's really good. And then we're just going to take a gentle rock backwards and forwards here. So bringing the weight slightly over the fingertips, shoulders come over the fingertips, stretching into the back of the wrists, and then we're just releasing that back. So if you're feeling like that's not that hard right now, you can spend more time with your weight over the fingertips. Otherwise, just doing little rocks in to just test that space. big deep stretch coming on along the back of the wrists. Again, that real extension of the wrists as you put the weight forwards can be really good to push out that pump. And if you're going to be spending a lot of time in handstands or arm balances or that kind of thing, it can be really good to build up this movement. If that's just way too much, you can take your hands back a lot closer to your knees, and then you've actually got a lot more weight sort of on your knees. Otherwise, just finding that space where you're getting that good stretch. Nice. And then just return to center, find yourself still. Going to reverse the hands, so switching the arms, externally rotating, so that the fingers are now pointing back towards the knees. And then again, just starting to play with that space of what happens when you transfer your weight forwards and backwards. So now you'll be getting that extreme extension as you move your weight towards your bum, towards your heels, and hopefully the pressure coming off as you move forwards. Take a little look at your fingers. Are your knuckles starting to pop off the ground? Is it all trying to escape with you? So even though you're now reversed in a different direction, checking that that base of support's still working and that you're not dumping all of the weight in the heel of the hand, that your fingers are all playing their part. Really, really good. And then just finding level once again. We're going to take a side to side direction, so I'll just move this way. So bringing your hands in so that the heels of the hands come together in the center. The fingers are pointing out towards the sides. And then the rock's going to be moving from side to side. So the closer your hands in together, you kind of end up with a central pillar of support. If you have them slightly further apart, you can load one more than the other. So play with the position of those hands and just working into it in that plane. Nice. And then finding center and some stillness. Okay, the last one we're going to do is, it doesn't work for some people. You've possibly done it before. We're going to switch the hand up so we're coming into flexion. So you're putting the back of the hand down towards the ground. Maybe try it with one hand first because it's quite hard to load, but just get the sense of what it is to load that in flexion. And then if that is feeling okay, one hand at a time, and you can flip both hands so that you're on the back of both hands. But if you end up having to compensate by your elbows coming out, then you're probably not quite ready for that yet. So maybe just spend some time working one hand at once. And this is really, really strong, but it's the opposite wrist movement to what we've just been doing. So moving into flexion, so stretching the extensors. And then just remembering to balance up your hands. So if you've been on one, flipping out on the other. Nice. And then just remembering to breathe while all of this is happening. I've already said that there's terrible circulation in our fingers. I think I must have terrible circulation in my forearms as well, given how long it takes me to clear pump. But if you're not breathing, then you've got even less chance of clearing it. And then just from wherever you are, returning to that neutral position, finding stillness one more time. So last drill here for the hands is sort of a little palm lift up, palm pulse. So pressing really into the fingers because they're always going to stay connected into the ground. I'd like you to just start to peel up the heel of your hand so that you come up onto your fingers. So if you want to make this easier, bring your hands back closer towards you so that your legs are taking more of the weight, and then pushing into your fingers, lifting the heels of your hands off the ground. And again, that's quite strong into the forearm. And the further forward your hands are, the more weight they'll take and the harder it will be. But you can do reps of that. I'll start to condition your fingers and your hands. And again, very, very strong on the pump front. So just try a few of those, and it might be something you want to do a little bit more of in your own time. And you can moderate the difficulty by that distance. Finding tabletop again, just in a nice balanced way. Going to move into the ankles a little bit. So I'm going to just shift this way so you can see slightly better against my white wall. So from here, we're going to take the right foot forward to between the hands to find a low lunge. Nice. And then you might want to push the left knee back a little bit and then uncurl the toes so they're on the floor. And then just looking at the knee. So a low lunge is actually one of those positions where it's okay to take the knee over the foot as long as it's tracking directly forward. So make sure it's not coming out diagonally to either side. And then from here, just testing the flexibility of the ankles. So you might need to bring your back leg in if it's gone too far, but starting to push your weight forwards into that ankle and let the knee come forward of the toes. And then actually, if you are not testing yourself to your full flexibility, you can tuck the back toes and then just help that to push you in more. The moment your heel lifts up, you've reached the end of your flexibility in terms of your ankle. So just finding out where you can go. And there's a rehab ankle exercise, which you start with your toes next to a wall and you see how far away you can take your toes from the wall to see how far you can get your knee to the wall. And that's kind of a measure of how much flexibility you've got in your ankle there, how far you can get before your heel lifts up. So dropping the back knee if you've had it in, and then just doing a few pulses in to start to warm up into that ankle in that flexion position. Nice, and then dropping the hands towards the ground again. And bringing the knee back and then switching through to lunge through with the left leg. So left leg forwards between the hands. Again, find whatever position on the back is good for you, whether that's with the toes tucked or whether that's with the toes uncurled. And then we'll start to take that left knee forwards, flexing at the ankle. See how far you can go. And using a little bit of a pulse to work into it. So you can see my knee gets a little bit beyond my toes, but I have particularly unflexible ankles. You think about your rockovers in climbing, smearing on a slab, that kind of thing. If you can build up the flexibility in your ankles, it gives you a few more options about where your weight is. But this is a really good test. And again, I'll send you links with a recording of this just to sort of see how you can test that against a wall. And then from wherever you are, untucking the back toe, planting the hands and returning both knees to find that final position. I'm going to push back to child's pose and I'll try to describe this for you really, really well so you don't have to look. So you're going to send the seat back towards the heels and stretch out the arms in front, let the forehead come down to the ground. Now listen very carefully. With your hands out in front of you, we're going to lift each finger in turn 5 times and then return it to the ground. So lifting the thumb up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Index finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Middle finger, 3, 4, 5. Ring finger, 2, 3, 4, 5. Little finger, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, we're going to do 2 more sets and you have a choice here. You can stay in child's pose or you can return to tabletop. So lift your head and come back to shoulders over your wrists and do the same thing with a little bit more weight. So wherever you've chosen to be, thumb, it's a lot harder in tabletop, 3, 4, 5, index, 2, 3, 4, 5, middle, 2, 3, 4, 5, ring, 2, 3, 4, 5, little, some of these might be virtual lists, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then final one, wherever you like it. So I'm going to take it back to child's. And of course, there are positions in between. So running through those fingers again. 3, 4, 5, index, 2, 3, 4, 5, middle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, little, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice. And then we're going to come upwards now. So pressing into the hands, lifting the forehead, and then tucking the toes behind you. Just going to, before we come up to a downward facing dog with the toes tucked, take your knees off the ground. So you're just hovering a tiny, tiny bit, loading up those toes again, feeling in that kind of squat position. And then just stay there for a couple of breaths, knees hover. It's very, very strong. And then push through the toes, sending the sit bones up towards the sky, finding downward facing dog. I'll just switch sides. And then from a downward facing dog, just checking in. So thinking about spreading the toes, spreading the fingers, and then trying to send the heels towards the ground. Depending on your hamstrings, it may be that they don't quite get there. And if they're really, really tight, your hamstrings, do feel free to have a bend in the knees. And then we'll just take alternate walks of the dog. So bending the knees and sending the heels down alternatively. Just trying to work into one ankle at a time. Getting a little bit of flex going on there. So in that last exercise, when we were in tabletop or child's, you probably noticed that there was a massive difference between it being way too easy in child's and quite difficult in tabletop. So I invite you in your own time to have a play with positions in between child where there's no weight on, and tabletop where there's all your weight on. Just see how you can activate those individual fingers. Start to strengthen the extensors. So still pedaling out here. And then finding stillness. So finding a point where you can push into the hands and send the heels to the ground as close as they might be. And then we're going to inhale and float up the right leg into the sky. So nice extension of the spine. If you're really flexy, you might be able to get it a little bit up there. And then just starting to circle the ankle. So circling the floating ankle, you might notice that the grounded foot is now flexing even further at the ankle because the weight's sort of being driven through there. So two things happening at once. Change the direction of your circle. And then just pay attention to the front end of your dog. So make sure your elbows are equal. Lovely. Pause with the circling of the right foot. And then bringing your right big toe and right second toe down to the back of your heel. Settle them onto the back of your heel, just above your heel. And then use that extra bit of leverage on your leg to push down through the left heel. So you've got your toes wrapped around your ankle, sort of about where your Achilles is, and then pushing down towards the ground on that left leg. Nice. Inhale, release that leg back up towards the sky, and then exhale, return it to downward facing dog. If you need a little quick break here, drop to your knees or push it out in plank, and then we'll rejoin each other in downward facing dog in just a second. Nice. So we're going to go again for the same on the other side. So grounding down through your right foot, inhale to float the left leg up towards the sky. And then starting to circle that ankle. And while you're circling the left ankle, feeling that right foot is really grounding down, getting good flexion. Practicing your slab smearing with that right foot. Nice, reverse the direction of your circle on your left foot. And if you're noticing any tightness in your calf at the moment, again, it's that thing we were talking about last week where unfortunately everything along the back chain of the body is connected. So a tight calf can Due to flexibility problems with the ankles, but equally a stubbed toe can cause problem up at the hips. So a holistic approach to that back chain. Pausing there with the circling, spreading the toes on the left foot and then bringing them down to the Achilles. So, and using that to drive the right heel towards the ground. And breathe. Nice. Check the front end of your dog is good. Can get a little bit strong on the shoulders right here. And then with an inhale, sending that left leg up towards the sky. And then exhale, come back to downward facing dog. We're going to get rid of this dog quite quickly because it's getting a little bit tiring now. So walking the hands towards the feet and the feet towards the hands so that you come into the middle of your mat and into a little bit of a hang. And first we'll grab opposite elbows with opposite hands. And again, if you're tight in the legs, put a bend in the knees. Otherwise, sending the sit bones towards the sky, head and arms down towards the ground. And you may want to just pedal out alternate legs, have a little bit of a nod and a shake. Just finding that space. Fabulous. From here, let your arms come down to the ground. Take a look at your big toes. So what I like you to do is make sure your feet are hip width apart. With your two-piece fingers, so your middle and your index finger, hook those round underneath your big toes and then connect them to your thumb. So you've got a grip of your big toes with your thumb and first two fingers. From there, inhale, coming up to a nice flat back. And then as you exhale, bend your elbows out towards the sides, fold down. Feel that connection with your toes as you drop your head to the ground. Again, you can loosen the knees if the strain is coming to the back of your legs. Just really feel that connection to the toes. Strong grip there. So again, a bit of a weird pose, but separation out of that big toe and the fact that you feel that that's opposing your fingers is a really good way of connecting through with that. It's quite a lot of times on an inside edge where you're really standing and placing power through that big toe. So feeling that you can engage it here. Nice. I'd like you to inhale, bring in the elbow straight, halfway lift with the body. And then as you exhale, now placing the sole of the foot on top of the palm of the hand. So slipping in your hand. So the back of the hand comes to the ground and you are standing on the palm of your hand. And if you can do that with both hands at once, that's great. Otherwise, one then the other. So your toes are now coming into your wrist crease. So if you give them a little wiggle, you'll feel that there's a bit of a massage happening in your wrist crease now. Inhale nice and straight. And then exhale again, bending those elbows out towards the sides. And feeling like you can fold more into that. Now, this is quite challenging because your feet are slightly uphill. You're just playing with the weight in your feet. So can you take your weight out of your heels and bring it slightly forwards without falling over? You may feel that you need to grip into your wrists with your toes to do that, which is no bad thing. And then just really feeling that slight position of instability. Nice. Okay, inhale, peel up the feet, release the hands. And then just take a quick shake out here. Amazing. So from here, we're going to take the hands to the hips and then hinge up the body all the way to standing. With the feet hip width stance apart, nicely grounded, we're going to find chair pose. So arms come from by the sides and we're going to simultaneously bend the knees and sweep up the arms above the head. Now, chair pose, it kind of can be a tiny little footstool or it could be a bar stool, so it doesn't matter where your chair is. Think about your lower back, so you should have a nice straight lower back, not scooting out your bum with a big scoop here. Think about tucking that tailbone so you're straight all the way from your shoulders down to your hips. And then again, how low you can go here is a measure of your ankle flexibility. So I'm pretty rubbish, but I'm sure some of you will be doing much, much better. And then in terms of strengthening those ankles, Maybe start to move the weight from one foot so that you can hover 1 foot off the ground. And then maybe actually you can squat a little bit lower on 1 foot, very, very strong. Coming back into both feet in that chair pose. Nice. And then maybe you can take the weight across into the other foot. Again, what will this ankle do? Is it any different? And then coming back into both feet. We're going to briefly sweep down the arms to the side, straighten the legs and stand up for a little rest. And then coming back into chair pose. So arms up, bottom down. And then from here, we're going to take something called diver's pose. So notice the weight and start to move it forward into your toes. So you're coming into standing on your toes, lifting the heels. And then from here, sweeping the arms out behind you as you come to a flat back position, balancing on those toes. So you're just about to jump off a diving board. It's okay to wobble, trying to stay balanced on those toes. Nice. So we're going to move back to chair pose. So putting your heels down to the ground, sweeping the arms up, finding that nice flat back. Oh, this is burning now. Don't worry, we're nearly there. One more time to diver's pose. So taking the weight forward into the toes, sweeping the arms back behind you. Nice flat back. Really good. Just a tiny, tiny little bit more balance. Amazing. And then let those heels come to the ground and stand up. And a little bit of a shakeout here. Again, those kind of raises, especially when you're doing them on one leg, will be a massive part of ankle rehab. So if you're just brushing your teeth at any time and want to start practice that ankle strength and conditioning, you can just do little calf raises, or when you're waiting to cross the road or something else like that. So we're going to take it down into a squat. So feet coming to probably about mat width apart, toes pointing slightly outwards, and then sending the sit bone to the ground as you bend your knees, hands come together, insides of knees connecting to the outsides of the arms. And then from here, we're just going to take it side to side onto the toes. So coming onto the left toes, and then ground that heel, coming onto the right toes. Nice. Maybe coming up onto both toes. And then you might be on the ball of your foot. Can you come up onto more toe and less ball? I don't think I can today. Sometimes it works. So again, stability and strength and flexibility in the ankles here. So a good place to hang out. Something I just love to show you while we're here actually is if you do get really pumped up from the wrists and the fingers and the forearms with all of those muscles. So if you shove, I'll do it from the side. If you shove your arms behind your knees, sort of pointing inwards, and then kneel down on them, effectively you're trapping all the blood in there. Bring your hands into fists. And then just kind of stay there for about 15 seconds. And what happens is when you release, you get this most massive rush of blood that comes back there, which can sweep out quite a lot of the lactic quite quickly. So that's not good mid route, but in between boulder sets or that kind of thing, that can be a really, really good release. Fantastic. So we'll just come back down to the ground again, seated. If you want to, finding butterfly with the soles of the feet together. If you want to zip your toes the other way to what you did at the beginning, then please do. Why not, I say? Although it's weird. I'm glad nobody from work can see me doing this. So with zip toes or not with zip toes, sitting in that butterfly position and then just really feeling that your hands are coming onto your feet and then just massaging the insides of your feet, so the soles of your feet from that position. And again, if you're sitting doing nothing at any point, which I know none of us rarely are, but multitasking, spending a little bit of time massaging the feet and hands could be really, really useful. Again, as circulation is really poor, particularly in the toes, and something that women tend to suffer with a lot more than men as well, and any manipulation you can do there to get the blood flow going is really, really useful. Nice. So 2 more last things. Again, you'll know this from climbing, but if you want to sort of start pushing that pump and loosening things up, like we were doing at the beginning, but just shaking. So it's really hard to sit there and shake for about 30 seconds, but 30 seconds of shaking wherever you want to have it not only feels amazing as long as you're not looking at yourself, but it really, really does start to loosen and shift everything that's happening around those fingers, wrists, and then moving that pump on. So one of my favorite things to do when nobody's watching. And of course, when you've fallen off that red point attempt and you're trying to shift some pump, then you'll probably be doing this anyway. Lovely. So last stretch, taking the hands together in front of you and really pushing the palms together. So bringing that in front of your chest and lifting up so that your elbows are kind of level with your shoulders. And then I'd like you to twist the hands away. So feeling it like they're pointing towards the camera or even further. Pushing the heels of the hands together. You'll feel again that stretch coming on with that extension getting into the forearms, back of the wrists. Nice. Inhale, bring it back up to center, and then flipping it so you're rotating inwards towards your chest now. Fantastic. Inhale back to center, and then one more shake, and you may release your zipper toes. So that's just been a very quick tour of some things that you can use probably as part of your toolkit, as part of your stretching, as part of your warm-up for climbing. Some of them you could sneak into your yoga routines, but hopefully they are useful for you and have given some love to some bits of the body you don't use very often.